All right, everybody, thanks. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mark Weathington. We've got, as Dennis mentioned, we've got Chris Glenn and Doug Ruhren, who are back at the Arboretum for a swan song and a goodbye with both our members and volunteers and supporters here live after we finish up, but also with all of you that they've gotten to know and who've gotten to know them over Zoom for the past couple of years. We wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to say goodbye without Chris being behind the camera. We've also got Tim and Dennis here to round us out. This is I don't know about everybody else, but this is my favorite midweek program, partially because I don't have to think about it. All the work's on those of you in the audience. This is our horticulture hour, which we get to do the 5th Wednesday of the month. So we only get a few of those a year. But this is your chance to ask us anything horticulture related, and we will do our best to answer those. We've got a lot of knowledge up here, at least to the right of me. I don't know if that's left on your screen, but on that side, there's a lot of knowledge. You can also, if you have something that you want to share with Doug or Chris, now is the time to do it. So do we have any questions?
We already have a couple of questions on the chat. All right, so the first question is from Carol, who asks that she heard a speaker recently who encouraged gardeners to cut off plants at the end of the growing season rather than pulling them out. I assume annuals. And that the speaker said that leaving the roots in the ground will help improve the soil. And do we agree?
I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At times at home, I would just mow my vegetable garden down or annuals down, leave all the roots in the ground.
Yeah. And going back to agronomic crops, they're doing that nowadays too. They're doing
Good point.
no-till.
Yeah.
So like for cornfields and grains and other things, they will just at the end of the season harvest it, and they won't till it up. They'll actually shoot the seed directly into the ground the next spring.
Yeah, I will put one small caution out there. If you buy your annual, let me say one other. I agree with everybody first, and one of the benefits of doing that is sometimes plants that you planted as annuals surprise you and come back, because many of our annuals are actually perennials, just not always winter hardy. So leaving them in, sometimes you get a great surprise. The one thing, if you get your annuals from a grower who is not very good, not very clean, doesn't have good sanitation, you can sometimes have nematodes in that potting soil if they reuse potting soil, if they're not clean, and that really light potting soil can be they can multiply like crazy, and over having that same soil in annual beds year after year after year, you can really have nematode populations that go through the roof. But go to a good grower and you won't have that problem. Your independent garden centers, they usually have really good plants. So make sure you're doing that.
Adding on to Mark's comment, I had canary wings begonia come back over the winter. Not all of them. I had 20 or so, but 3 or 4 or 5 of them came back over the winter. That was kind of a nice surprise. I'm not going to pull them out.
I only planted 2 or 3, hoping they'd come back. I don't grow annuals, so when I plant it, I'm hoping it'll come back.
All right. Well, the questions are coming in fast on the chat here. So the next question is about a banana plant. It was being grown indoors. It may have been overwatered. A new leaf started turning yellow and then it died. Then the stalk bent over and all the rest of the leaves died.
Ooh.
Okay, they put it outside and a new pup started growing, but then it died. And can they save it? They have not checked for root rot yet. That might be the first thing they need to check.
Is it in the ground or is it it's still in that pot?
They didn't say. Okay. I would assume it's still in the pot.
It might be. If it's in a warm area like here, I would maybe stick it out in the ground and see if it gets going instead, because it'll like that heat and humidity right now. I mean, if it's disease, it could still go, but
I kept bananas in the house for the first time in years, and they were quite unhappy. At most, they had 1 or 2 leaves the entire season, and put them outside, and they've just gone gangbusters. We probably saw them all on the show right here last year. There were some of the ones that Tim dug up to show you how to overwinter. And I overwintered them. They were right smack dab in the south-facing window, and I was afraid they were going to get spider mites, something horrible. They didn't, but they were completely unhappy. They went out almost first thing in the spring, where they're going to be far better. They are not a good houseplants at all, so I would not keep them inside.
And did they say, when did it throw the shoot up? When it was after they put it outside?
Yeah.
Or just, okay, I was going to say, maybe if it had thrown that secondary shoot up before they put it outside, and then you didn't acclimatize it to the light, they'll sometimes be a little unhappy. But
True. Yeah.
Emil, I know, Doug, you grow a lot of plants indoors.
Yeah.
You have thoughts? My biggest thought would be maybe it's really bad old soil.
What I was going to say, I'd be inclined to bare root it in case, as Mark says, the soil has rotted away if it's many years old and then the soil structure is no longer any good. I'd bare root it, either put it in fresh potting soil or plant it in the ground for the summer. I've overwintered bananas bare root in a black plastic trash bag in the basement, because the true stem of a bananas is very much like an elephant ear bulb or tuberous stem, and that can be just stored dry all winter.
Yeah, if you want to grow it as a house plant, Chris is right. During the winters when we have dry air in the house with the air conditioners going, most house plants, most tropical things don't really like that anyway, but bananas really don't, you know. I don't know if you can see behind us, we have beautiful bananas, and the humidity today is, 150%. So, and they love this, even if we don't. So, the soil's where I'd go first.
And I should add, 2 of the 3 that Tim dug up lived. So one of them also
they weren't very big.
Has died. The small one died.
Yeah.
It lived for over half the winter and had made a few leaves, but it shriveled one day. So kind of like yours, just not happy.
All right. Thank you, guys. Next question is from Valerie. She wants us to remind her what is missing when her tomatoes bloom, flower, fruit up, but the fruits don't ripen.
Are they rotting?
Time?
Or are they?
Maybe they're a green flesh tomato, green skinned tomato, like green zebra. I don't know. I've never heard of that.
Or are they just falling off before?
Yeah, got squirrels eating them before they turn red or disappearing somehow.
It doesn't say.
Yeah,
Valerie, if you have anything further you want to add.
Well, I would say echo something that Doug always says is, before you say, what am I missing in my soil, do a soil test. Because you don't need to just dump things in the soil. I've never really heard of some sort of nutrient missing in the soil that keeps tomatoes from ripening. There are other things. If you don't have calcium or not enough water to move calcium to your plant, you get blossom end rot, and there are things like that. But not ripening is not one I'm familiar with. We do have a live audience. Do we have with a lot of great gardeners? Anybody here have that problem, or have a solution for it? No.
I was just thinking it's time.
Yeah,
it's early
for them to turn. I've only had a few of my tomatoes turn red so far, and it's just the cherry tomatoes. It's not the big ones. I think we've harvested 15 cherry tomatoes so far. Not bad.
Yeah, perhaps.
Had a salad.
Not done growing yet.
So much worth the effort. Yeah. Just kidding. There's more coming. Including some big ones that'll be turning red hopefully sometime soon. Oh, wow.
So
will you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was about tomatoes again. Somebody saying that they had a couple of tomatoes, one with, if they think is fusarium, and the other one was with early blight. And what should they do with them? They were told they needed to pull them out. I am not a vegetable gardener, so and I don't know that we have a lot of vegetable gardeners up here. Doug probably has the most experience, maybe Chris, but
mine have a little bit of a problem on the leaves, and I've just been spraying them with is it baking soda? That does a little bit of the antimicrobial. And that seemed to be doing a trick. And of course, I pulled the lower leaves off, which is where they had it, and it's holding its own and doing very well so far.
If it's just foliar, I don't know. But if it's root related, is
Fusarium. If it's truly Fusarium, I think you know that I would get out. Early blight. Oh man, I exhausted most of my knowledge of tomato diseases when I told people how to take care of blossom end rot. So I just not.
How invested are you in those two plants?
Oh, these are beautiful plants. And they produce
Have they decided to
One
wilt?
of them's not beautiful. It's got spots all over the leaves. You already told us that.
You know, the early blight starts in the bottom, you get the wilting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just starts.
If it helps any, Bree is now on a late season planting. She is not doing the early season planting anymore. She just starts planting, I think, end of June or early July, which is right where we're at right now. She's had much better success with a later season planting.
Okay.
So you can pull them out and try them all over again and be on the same season that Bree is, and she's a wonderful tomato grower. Yeah.
I wouldn't take cuttings off those two plants though. Take them off your healthy neighbor ones maybe. But they root very easily. Yes, cuttings root very easily.
Yes.
If you're only growing a few tomatoes and you want to get good tomatoes, they cost more, but grafted tomatoes, believe it or not, tomatoes are grafted, and they're grafted on disease-resistant root stocks, and it makes a big difference. If you're planting out, 30 or 40, the cost might make a difference. If you're planting out 5, invest the extra $20 in those 5 plants total to get your grafted plants.
And can I ask, do you know the kinds of tomatoes these are? Are they heirlooms or are they?
One is an Arkansas traveler.
Okay, so it's an heirloom.
Heirloom, yeah.
Oh, they're both heirloom. Well, I don't know. The Sun Gold. I'm not sure.
Sun Gold, I think, is
Gold
hybrid.
is a modern, yeah.
But a lot of those heirlooms do not have much resistance, and they've done a lot of the hybrids, which give them, you'll see different letters after them. And one of them is Fusarian.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any resistance for the early blight or not, but if you can grow tomatoes that have more resistance, you might be a little bit better off, especially if you plant them anywhere near those.
my one and only time planting an heirloom tomato, it got huge, it was stunning, had big tomatoes on it. One day it didn't look quite right, and by the end of the week it was dead. And I swear I would never do an heirloom again. I would do one on a grafted rootstock.
Yeah.
I have not seen them for sale anywhere, but I would do one on a grafted rootstock if I could find them.
I have quite a bit of experience with heirloom tomatoes. When I was in grammar school, I got a blue ribbon for my tomatoes. And, my favorite tomato is the true German Johnson. There's 2 different German Johnsons. And, it's really important to rotate where you plant tomatoes, and that's hard in a community garden. And the understocks, the grafted tomatoes, they were bred for greenhouse culture, where tomatoes are growing for a much longer period, like maybe multiple years. And if you're invested in a greenhouse system for growing tomatoes commercially, the understocks were developed so you did not have to rotate tomatoes, because the rootstocks were bred just for disease resistance. And grafted heirlooms, they'll still be producing long after other things have given up the ghost. No, the understock shouldn't affect the quality of the fruit.
I think
she's saying the heirlooms taste better.
Tastes better, yeah.
Well, yeah, they do. German Johnson, yeah, my goodness.
So mine was a German Johnson that died.
There you go.
I did not earn a blue ribbon.
Okay, well, we have plenty more questions in the chat, but let's, anyone else in the audience want to raise their hand and ask something before we move back to the chat? Okay, a shy group. Okay, think about it. All right, so another Valerie, a different one, asks, had some chrysanthemums that died this year after having survived for several years. And was it the last cold freeze in March, or do you have any other ideas of what might have killed her mums?
When did they die? Yeah. Did they die? They didn't come through the winter, or they came through the winter and then they died?
Apparently they died after March, but she didn't say.
That's bizarre.
Like June or whatever.
Yeah.
If they were.
I've seen a heavy infestation on mums when they're just little low to the ground shoots over the wintertime. That
Heavy
sedum, but
infestation of what?
aphids.
Aphids.
Hasn't killed them, but that's the
Yeah.
only thing I can think of that may have been a problem. Would be something like
Was
that.
our
but
rain this
mine
winter?
No, we didn't
Unusual?
have. It wasn't wet. We did have just that one cold spell in March, but I don't think that should have killed them.
They should have come
No.
back.
All
They
my
should have
moms
come back
are
from that.
going gangbusters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to get rid of a bunch.
Yeah, you have to
They're
thin them.
Too vigorous in the garden. So, yeah.
So Valerie, we have moms on our plant cart frequently.
I was going to say, come to the annual plant distribution.
Yeah,
They're
the plant
usually in the
distribution,
giveaway.
too.
I'll stick
we
some
do them for free.
next week.
And the Mum Society meets here on a monthly basis at the Arboretum, and they're always full of great information and baby mum plants, too.
Yeah, I will say the garden mums, you go by with your pumpkins, those are not, a lot of those are not very good garden plants. They will come back year after year, but if you've ever worked in a nursery setting and having to grow those plants, the one thing you know is that they are on a weekly fungicide drench because they are incredibly susceptible to fungal issues in production. And it could be that if for whatever reason they stayed a little bit wetter than they had in previous years, they could have succumbed to some kind of fungal disease. I have seen mums go downhill very quickly with southern blight, and you can, if you look in at southern blight, it may be too late to see it now, but when they're dying and they're actively dying, if you kind of go in there and look, you can see a lot of, looks like
Mustard seed.
mustard seed. There you go.
Little round things.
Mustard
round
seed
things.
fungus is another name for southern blight.
Mustard seed fungus. Never heard that.
And
Learn
this would
something
be a good
new every
opportunity.
time.
This would be a good opportunity to plant some garden-worthy mums then.
Yeah. There are a lot of great garden mums that are not those
Not
little
the
domed weird-looking things.
the cushion mums. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, Peanut Gallery, any questions? No? All right, back to the chat. Oh, yeah,
Actually.
okay.
Musella.
Mhm.
How do you overwinter?
Right there.
Yes. So, cover with mulch?
No.
Repeat the question.
Because
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys know where I live.
Yes.
Now, we got my Wilmington, and the last 2 years, these did not come out of the winter very well.
Wow.
Okay, so before answering everybody, we got a whole big audience at home. So the question here was, how do we overwinter our Musella lasiocarpa? That's the yellow flowered banana. It's very close relative to the other bananas, Musa. So Musella is really an easy garden plant for us, and we're being asked by somebody who lives down closer to the coast of North Carolina, where it should be even better there. And I've got no idea myself. Our plant that you're pointing to has been there since 2009 or 2010.
Yeah,
with
right
no protection. We don't put cages around them and fill them with leaves or mulch them or anything like that.
I was wondering if Paul's Musella just likes to grow in the wintertime. When it
then
warms up a
maybe
little bit, then it gets hit by a freeze and it just happens too much.
I think of is we had that late frost damage after that.
So there's a mention of some frost damage after the things had started growing, but at 35 in the spring, it should not have killed it. It could have knocked it back pretty hard.
What's
but
your soil like? Is it
Wonder
wet,
if it was
dry?
too wet in the winter.
Yeah, well, everything.
It's wet.
Well, now, where it is, it tends to be wet in the winter.
Yeah, that could cause it possibly to rot out.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, because I add compost into the soil.
And then is it that might even hold the moisture even more?
Then I'm going to get some. I want a bag of the
Permatil.
Permatil.
Yeah. Permatil is great
Raise your bed.
for that.
Yeah, a raised bed would be good. I mean, they do need some drainage, despite the fact that they.
affect any of my other bananas.
Yeah. All right. Do we have
Just
any?
that
Do
one.
we have other questions?
Oh, lots more.
All right.
They're coming in faster than
These
we're answering
folks,
them
let's concentrate a little bit more online because these folks can buttonhole us
at the party.
at the party.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So we have a question from David, and he might have to unmute and ask over the speakers, because all it says here is, I have a question about rainbow drooping Leucothoe, and he didn't go on and...
Oh, well, I'll say one thing about Gerard's rainbow drooping Leucothoe. It's a real pretty thing, but it's a pain in the butt to grow around here. It struggles.
Yeah.
It's not an easy plant. You have to pamper it to make it grow well.
Yeah, I agree. And we actually are in college. I know another graduate student while in school was looking to try and figure out if there were some mycorrhizal or fungal associations that were needed to make it grow. I don't think anything ever came out of that. I think Gerard's rainbow is just not a very good landscape plant. If you get it in the right spot, just the right spot, you know, not 3 inches to the left, not 3 inches to the right, but just the right spot, it's pretty good until it gets a little bigger and moves into that 3-inch spot on either side, and then it goes downhill.
Yeah, if you were really good with
plant.
if you were really good with, you know, if you really kept up with container plants, I'd be inclined to grow it in the container if you provided you gave it the care it needed, so it would have that perfect drainage.
Yeah.
And keep it moist.
I've never even bothered planting one because of that problem.
Yeah, I've only ever seen them a few times, and they're never that dense.
Yeah.
Okay. How many hours of sun do reblooming azaleas need, and what kind of pH also?
Well, there's a bunch of different reblooming azaleas nowadays. I can only speak for the Encore azaleas. Buddy Lee bred those in Mobile, Alabama, and they recommend growing them in as much sun as possible. So, you know, I would say, and I wonder what the others of you think, maybe at least 6 hours of sun?
Probably ideally, but and there's other ones that we've had, and I've looked at the labels before I planted them, like I think it was Bloomathon or something like that.
Yeah.
And they'll say shade, and it's like I plant them in the shade and they just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
So they might be wanting more sun than...
Yeah, I will say, you know, there's been some bred by NC State, and I've seen those out in the trial fields, evaluation fields, and they are growing in full sun, open meadows. To me, they're one of those plants where I think they look like a better plant with some shade, but they flower a whole lot better in more sun. I'm also one of those people who just doesn't like the reblooming azaleas very much.
We have so many other things we can grow here.
I just have one, and it's underneath a skinny tulip tree. It's really tall, but really skinny, so it gets a whole lot of morning sun and then a whole lot of afternoon sun, and seems to have to be the best of both worlds. It has a good-looking plant and flowers decently.
Yeah, there you go. So what it wants is moist, well-drained, acidic soil in you know, a little bit of afternoon shade, but full sun the rest of the time, where it never dries out, but it is always free draining. And
Well, I don't have the moisture, not even close.
you know,
Yeah,
it's that
I-
magic thing that all the plants want.
I have a few reblooming ones, and they're in full sun and kind of dryish, and they struggled to get established, but now that they're established, they're doing okay. They look good, they branch well, they flower well.
And to add something to that, we find that well, I personally do, and I won't speak for everybody else, but if you have a choice between buying one of those azaleas as a quart pot or a gallon pot or a 3-gallon, get the quart. Plants, small plants, just establish so much easier, with the exception of things that are marginally hardy, you know, palms and things like that you're really pushing the limits on. But if I had my preference at my home garden, I wouldn't plant anything larger than maybe a 2-quart pot. And even that, I'm like, oh God, really, this thing?
So much easier to dig that hole, and then the plant acclimatizes so much better and faster.
Yeah. And I don't find that I need to water. I actually find I need to water them much less to get them established.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing.
Yeah.
Not all of the repeat blooming azaleas are equally good at repeat blooming. Again, my experience is primarily with the Encore azaleas. Now, I've grown about 20-some varieties of them, 27 cultivars, and some will start blooming in like August and continue up until frost, and there's a few cultivars that manage to start blooming the day before you have a frost, and that was the one and only day they repeated bloom in the fall. So, you know, talk to somebody who has experience with the different selections, and so you'd, you know, buy one that's going to perform well in this area. They'll show up in garden centers in late summer and fall in full bloom, but that's really no indication of whether it's going to behave that way in your own garden. You know, an NC State introduction Perfecto Mundo is the series. We have Perfecto Mundo pink, double pink in the garden, and that blooms for a long, long time.
All right. Let's see. What variety of banana are we sitting in front of? Tim?
Musabaju. That's probably the hardiest and probably the most vigorous one we're going to grow around here. There are some other ones you can grow, but yeah, that's Musabaju, most commonly available one too.
Yeah,
And it'll get 20 feet tall.
if we sit here too much longer, it's going to be coming up under our seats.
Yeah.
It spreads quite fast. And
Beautiful banana.
Yeah.
Don't expect fruit. It does flower occasionally, but the fruit they never set anything, and it's not an edible species anyways.
Okay. Any suggestions for June bug control? I don't know if they mean Japanese beetles or...
Well, yeah,
Yesterday on
ones.
Facebook about the different ones that are confused. So I don't know. Does milky spore work on other beetles other than?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why would
All
we
beetles.
be controlling June bugs unless they were confusing them with Japanese beetles? Japanese beetles are about the size of your
pinky nail.
maybe fingernail,
Yeah.
whereas a June bug is big. And I don't eat. Do June bugs even eat anything? Well, they'll eat
Figs.
fruit.
They love
They'll
figs.
eat fruit. Yeah.
Is it emerald June beetle or something like that? I saw a thing last night actually. It's the only I remember.
Well,
They're big green ones that I see in the garden.
I'm from
I don't
Chicago,
know.
and June bugs are those
They're brown
similar
probably.
sized ones to Japanese beetles that are brown.
Yeah. And that's what I had back home. There's
Yeah.
several species that are commonly called June beetles.
Yeah, so
They're
beetles in
probably
general,
with
if you need
common
to
names.
control, milky spore is a good thing. That attacks the grubs. That's kind of a long-term solution. 7 is okay.
Japanese beetles, yeah.
You know, I like to tell people we grow, almost 8,000 different plants here at the Arboretum. Just find something else. Who has time to go put
Yeah.
chemicals and spray and do stuff out in the garden? Just rip out whatever you don't like and plant something else. So much easier.
I've never had June bug bother anything,
No, I see
but I've
them.
never had a fig.
You don't need figs, right?
No.
Yeah. He's weird that way.
Cookies should be chocolate. Right, everybody? Chocolate cookies. No fig cookies.
All right. Next question is from Annabelle, who has a Prunus mumei. Has a hard, dark brown coating on a number of the branches. Any ideas?
Yeah. Black knot fungus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's not something you're gonna be able to treat. If you've only got one and it's doing that, you can keep the tree until it really goes downhill. But if you're growing other things in that rose family, other trees, if you've got apples and pears and things like that, or just flowering cherries, you want to go ahead and get that out.
How long would she have to have it go downhill completely before she'd want to get rid of it if it was the only one there? Does it matter a couple of years? Or?
I've seen Prunus mumei last for quite a while with black knot fungus.
Yeah.
But your real issue is spreading it around to other.
And do your
other
neighbors
things.
have other ththings that they might be susceptible?
We have
Do
a
you like
question
your
in the
neighbors?
audience.
I have it like right now.
So one of the folks in our audience says she has a big mature Prunus mumei, Japanese apricot, and it had just a little bit of black knot a year ago, and this year it's completely covered with it. So she recommends getting it out immediately. So there you go.
Okay.
Because there's a whole lot of plants in the rose family you can get.
All right. Next question is about cannas. Somebody planted some cannas, and in their first year, they were destroyed by leaf rollers, even though they tried to remove debris and prevented to prevent them from overwintering, and they also sprayed. Their question is it best to give the garden a reprieve of a year or so before trying planting cannas again?
Well, ideally.
I don't know their overwintering cycle. Does anyone here? Do they go down into the ground, the moth or the butterfly or skipper, whatever it is, and come back? Or
Well, there's two different
Yeah,
leaf
there are.
rollers, and the lesser and the greater Canna leaf roller, and I think the greater leaf roller is one of those Lepidopterus that doesn't overwinter here but travels north in the summer. But that little one, I think you're going to have it every single year. It used to not be prevalent, prior to the 1980s when very few people were growing cannas, and now that cannas are everywhere, I just think if you grow cannas, you're going to have it.
Yeah, the only thing that I've done to keep them from just looking awful in the garden is you grow the cannas. Once they start looking bad, you cut them all completely down to the ground. Don't compost it. Just bag it up and get rid of it, and let them resprout. They'll come back again, but you can kind of get successive flowering doing that. But I think there was a point we discussed of getting rid of all the cannas here. There's some species cannas that don't seem to be affected as much, but they don't look like the big hybrid cannas.
Australia's one that's been a little better with the really glossy leaf, in my experience. But it can still get it, but it's not.
It's always been bad in the perennial.
It's not as bad as the others.
I won't plant cannas. It's not worth it.
I planted my first bed last year, and I pulled it out this year because it was so bad looking. And I just have a few on the back porch that I can maintain more easily and readily in containers, and that's where I keep mine.
Okay, it is time for Doug and Chris and myself to join the party. There's a party inside. That's what you give up when you join us online. But I would love if everybody at home would unmute themselves just for a minute and say, thank you and goodbye to Doug and Chris. We hope this isn't the last time you see them, but thank you and goodbye for now, at least.
Helicopter. You're welcome. Oh, I heard a dog barking.
You guys can't see it, but you're getting air kisses too.
Oh yeah,
air kisses.
We will miss you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a lot of fun doing the midweek programs.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You've been wonderful.
Take care.
Carolyn, I love everything you guys did for the garden. It was fantastic.
Thank y'all all. Okay, we are going to step away.
Share where you're going?
Oh, I could. So I was supposed to start tomorrow, but it's been delayed to July 5th now. But I'll be starting with the U.S. Customs here in the Raleigh area at the RDU International Airport. So I'll be the plant police, but also animals and insects and all kinds of other little agricultural problems.
And I think I managed to turn this back on. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. I'm in day 3 of my new job, gardening at Plant Delights Nursery. So you can find me there. And I'm enjoying it. But thanks, everybody.
Okay, we'll continue for a little bit online with Dennis and Tim to answer your questions. We have some interns here. Maybe they'll join as well. I don't know, but they're saying no. That's fine. So thank you all for joining us once again. We'll be with you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. So I guess it's Dennis and I.
Yeah.
So we're down a few minds. So we'll see what we can answer if there's anything else.
The questions are still coming in. In fact, I'm behind by 28 questions.
I don't know if we'll get through that many.
We are only going to go for another 23 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So you're going to have to speak fast and keep your answers short.
I tend to do that, but if I know anything.
Okay. Valerie asks.
Oh no.
Valerie started some cuttings of buttonbush from our prop class that we had here 3 years ago. They have yet to bloom.
Oh my goodness.
How long should it have taken them to bloom?
They should have flowered the next year. They're quite easy to grow and root and grow. What kind of light does she have them in? It would be one of my questions.
Yeah, I would imagine it's environmental. Right?
They typically want some bright light there. In the wild, they'd be growing on pond edges. So they typically like moist soil, not dry, and they're wanting plenty of light. They tend to be the shrubby border along a pond or a wetland area. So that might be why they aren't flowering without knowing what her circumstances are.
Okay, next one is a tip, actually.
That's good.
Wynn Hines says that they planted their tomatoes in a big pot with just potting mix to avoid the wilt diseases.
That's a great thing to
Yes,
do, and
good
that
idea.
also helps with if you have nematode issues. You can container grow them, and then it's so much easier. Then you can start fresh each year. Don't recycle the media. Compost that media.
Yeah. Lily wants to know where she can buy moonflower plants because every time she puts out her seedlings, they get eaten.
Is that moonflower as in Ipomea alba, or is that as in brugmansias or daturas? Those are both some other plants that get called that. Daturas, they're pretty easy from seed, but brugmansias you readily get by cuttings, and the moon vine or the moonflower, those the Ipomeas, those are typically. I'd only grow those from seed. I would never try to find those.
And I wouldn't think too many things eat datura, right?
Nothing eats not many. I don't
if
even
we
know
eat
that
it,
the
we
rabbits
die.
even eat them in the
Yeah.
garden. They're very, very toxic. But you grow them, if it's datura, you grow it just like you would a tomato or a pepper. They're super easy that way. If it's the Ipomea, that's a morning glory. I can't kill them in the garden. I wish I could. I hate to say it. Bob Lyons, he loved them, and I don't
Yes, he
so
did.
much. And we still have remnants of Bob's plantings here.
Sure, that
So-
was my first interaction with the Arboretum was as a volunteer working under Bob,
Yeah,
and I do remember lots and lots
my
of
mom
datura.
plants morning glories each year, and it's
The
like, Mom, why do you do that
double-flowered
now?
Yeah.
She's in Pennsylvania. They don't flower very often, very long. But anyways, I can't say why your moonflowers might not be growing well. But those are just some guesses. I would, if like I said, datura is going to be much easier to get as a seed if you're growing any of the purple flowered ones or the
How about plants?
yellow flower ones. I don't see this. They're not commonly available. You might have to go online. You might be able to find some of them. Logi's greenhouse might have them sometimes, some of the more select ones, but they're typically doing brugmansias if that's what you're talking about
Now, what
as
if
in
they're talking about
moonflower.
moon vine? at the
Moon
moment?
vine as an Ipomea. I mean, occasionally you might find it at your local nursery first thing in the spring, but they are problematic growing in pots because they're vines and they're always a pain. But they're super easy
Hard
to
to
soak the
produce,
seed, and it will germinate and nick it and soak that seed, and it'll germinate readily. It's getting a little bit late probably to do it now, but that's how I would do it. And then I wouldn't don't leave them inside long. Get them outside. Just do it as soon as you're frost free. Get them outside, and they'll grow on.
Okay. Valerie asks, Valerie has a Bletilla
Okay.
in an oak forest, and
Okay.
it doesn't want to bloom. Does it need more sun?
I mean, here in the garden, ours don't always flower real well either. If it's a Bletilla striata, they often get frozen because they emerge so easily, and that could be why it's not flowering. But they'll take shade, so but they'll probably flower a little better with a little more sun. But the thing is, when you get them out in the sun, they're losing that canopy protection, and they will get frozen.
More frosted, yeah.
If you're wanting to grow another Bletilla, some of the Ochrolouca selections, which are typically a creamy yellow, and there's some new hybrids between Ochrolouca and striata, which are later flowering and very vigorous. But I would give them a little bit more sun.
A little bit more sun.
And they flower over a longer period too than striata. So, but they tend to flower later and miss freezes. So,
At Plantolites, we produced them in full sun,
Yeah.
in our full sun
Yeah.
greenhouse, and they bloomed fine.
yeah,
In my own yard, I have them in kind of half sun, and they don't bloom very
yeah,
well either.
they're better with a little more sun. Yeah,
Um,
and it could be the drought too, and from oaks, they tend to soak up every drop of water around.
Oh,
them.
that too.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so a call back to our discussion on tomatoes.
Okay.
Someone wants to know where to buy grafted tomatoes.
That I can't tell you offhand.
Yeah, no, I can't. I don't know that I.
You might
see 'em
find
very
some
much.
online. It's getting a little bit late in the season even for here, but you may still be able to find them. some of your local nurseries, if you talk to them early in the spring, see if they can order some in for you. It's like Doug was saying, most of them are being used commercially for field production in areas now, or in greenhouse production, so that they don't have to worry about the root diseases, and they're able to produce them in the same beds or the same fields for much longer. So on the retail or the homeowner side, you have to really search for them. But if you contact or go to your nurseries in the spring, they may be able to order you some in, because they can buy them in a much larger quantity than what you would be able to. Or look online. I hate to say it, that's where to find everything.
Yeah, these days.
And they can get shipped really easily. And if you are in this area, it isn't too late, but it's going to be harder to find them. I have the feeling if you can find them now, plant them.
Yeah. All right. I have a question from Sue. Who says that several of the panel members who have disappeared have dog owners and are dog lovers. I have a dog, and I love it. Are there any plants you wouldn't plant in your yard due to danger or poisonous to dogs?
That I can't tell you. You might need to check with your vet. And I find that people will say, "Oh, the vet says this is toxic." I don't know. You might even be able to find it online to get a good list, because I don't know offhand. I live in an apartment and I have fish.
I have a dog, and I've actually had several dogs, and none of them have expressed any interest whatsoever in eating my plants, except for when they are sick to their tummy and they need to eat grass. But they never want to eat anything else. So I plant willy-nilly, and I've never had any problems.
That's typically that's the thing, but some people worry more often.
Yeah.
Cooperative extension.
Yes. One of our, they're saying cooperative extension's another excellent place to check. And that you should be able to find online. Probably you can do NC State and cooperative extension, and then dogs, maybe. That is food, or that is poison, you'll get a good list.
Sure, yeah. Okay, Diane has a question about the medium used in bogs.
Okay.
And does it need to be changed out or amended periodically? And should the sand be very coarse grained in a bog?
I don't know about the sand part of it, but I would doubt you ever want to swap it out. Once you get it established, I mean, it's probably fine. And they're probably going to be sand peat mixes is my typically. They're very low. If you're doing a true bog, it's typically a low nutrient ecosystem. And I know out in I go out into Croatan in the eastern North Carolina when I go down and visit my relatives. No one comes along and swaps out that sand and peat. It's been there for millennia. So I think you'd be fine after you get it established. You shouldn't have to swap it out. If you're doing it in a container, it might be a different story. You might have to readjust it at times. But just as the organic matter in it, the peat's going to break down much more quickly in a container probably than it would in a natural ecosystem where it's a bit more
hotter in a container. Okay, we're falling further and further behind.
That's why I'm going fast.
We're behind by 31 now. Okay, hydrangea cultivar recommendations for zones 7 and 8.
Where do they live?
Somewhere in zone 7 and 8.
If you're coastal, you can probably get away. I mean, macrophyllus even here are iffy because of our ups and downs in temperature. So I don't recommend macrophyllus, which are your big, colorful blues and pinks that much. Because one year, I mean, we will get warm in January or February. They'll come out of dormancy. Then we go, our temperature drops into the teens. The buds have broken dormancy, and it ends up killing the buds. And that's on the ones that flower on the previous year's growth. And even the modern selections that supposedly flower on the new wood, you're going to get a limited number of flowering on them. I would go for any of the paniculatas, which are going to be your white ones typically, and arborescens. Wherever you grow them, they are going to be consistent. Quercifolias are going to be good as long as you don't have major deer issues, which are our native oak leaf hydrangeas. Those three are typically going to have far less of an issue with cold snaps during the winter. They do not break dormancy. And then the macrophyllus. Serratas, if you can find those, which are similar, a little bit more diminutive typically than the macrophyllus, those could give you the same colors that you're going to get in the macrophyllus. And they tend to be a little bit hardier, less likely to break their dormancy during the winter and get major damage. And they will also flower a little better on their new wood than the macrophyllus.
Yeah, my macrophyllus get zapped
It's
every
like
year.
at 2 out of 3 years you don't get a good display, and then if you're
Yeah.
lucky at that 3rd year.
I will say though that I have one. I must be a microclimate kind of near the house. It's in a corner.
Is it maybe on the north side of the house is where I would put it so it doesn't break dormancy?
Mine's on the east,
North and east
side
yes.
of the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it does better than the others.
And also the fact that macrophyllas are water hungry. Arborescens and paniculatas and quercifolias tend to be a little bit more tolerant of our increasing droughts that we have. The macrophyllas will just sit there and sulk.
Yeah, they will bad.
And
they look bad too.
As I say, they're dehydrangeas then.
Okay.
So again, I would go, like I said, our arborescens in a similar species from here in the eastern United States and quercifolias, and then the paniculatas from East Asia.
Serrata too?
Serratas would be good too, but they're a little more tolerant of drying out too than the macrophyllas.
They're
a little longer to establish on those, but yeah.
I have all of those in my yard, and everything he said matches exactly how mine.
So I won't say any specific cultivars, but those are just some generalities I would take into account.
Other than trapping or poison, how do you control moles or eliminate moles?
Moles are going to go after, if it's moles, they are going after the grubs in your soil and the insects and worms in your soil. They are predators. They're not touching your plants. So I hate this. I don't want to, again, I don't like to over-treat anything, but that's where someone was asking about beetles earlier. The grubs in the ground is where they're going. If you control the grubs, so maybe with milky spore, you probably have grubs in your yard and they're gonna come into that. If you have voles, on the other hand, some of them are protected. I'm not getting into those, but they are herbivores. And don't discourage snakes and things in your garden.
Little dogs that
Those
like to dig up.
are the natural predators for voles. That copperhead that you are always afraid of. That black snake, don't kill every snake in your yard or in your neighbor's yard. That's it, so. I'm not gonna I don't know what you're gonna use as a chemical treatment. Do not ask me, that's not my field. And I don't know if it's any legal ways of doing it. So.
Okay. We have another callback, back to Prunus mumei.
Okay.
On the tree that has the black knot,
Okay.
should they attempt to take cuttings to recover it?
I would not. I would start fresh.
Start fresh.
And the cuttings, you can root them theoretically. They're not overly easy unless you have really good vigorous shoots earlier in the season. You can do hardwood cuttings or you can do softwood cuttings. Typically, I would say in late May would be the time to do that. But you can go and buy a nice plant much more quickly than you're gonna grow a new cutting. It's gonna take you years to get something that amounts to something from a cutting, while you can get a grafted plant that will grow much more quickly. So.
Okay, we have another comment. BT will also work on Canna leaf roller.
Yeah, because a lot of your caterpillars, and there's different BTs, so you have to look, like I know, for instance, the potato beetle is Thuringiensis San Diego strain. I don't remember what the ones are. It depends on, there's ones that go for caterpillars as well. So you have to, it's a little more specific on what what it is.
Which
so,
BT you buy.
Which BT you buy, so
All right.
yeah. So just take that into account, read the package. BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, it's a bacteria.
And it's a
very
powder or a dunk you buy and
yeah.
spread around the
Yeah,
garden.
you can spray it as well. So they use the dunks, like you say, that's used for mosquitoes, for instance. So, and they only hurt specific things. So it's not, you're being very selective.
Yeah, they're
and
safe
that's
for pets and kids and everything else. They only kill insects by altering their gut pH. And we can't, they don't affect our gut pH or any animal really, other than insects. Okay. We're going to get caught up real quick because there was about, of those 30 we were behind,
Okay,
29
good.
were, thank you, Doug, and good luck, Chris.
Okay.
And you guys are the best. And so we're all of a sudden caught up. Back to the tomatoes, another comment.
Oh no.
Grafted tomatoes. They want to
Okay.
know if, can they get rootstock online and graft their own? Yes, you can graft your
You
own.
can probably grow your own rootstock. I don't know what they use right offhand, but you might be able to find a seed source of a specific strain of tomato that they use for that. But yeah, you can.
And the grafting process is not
I think you use a
difficult
razor,
either.
and I've never done it, but
I'd never done it either.
But
I
I've
had a
seen people do
classmate that was her master's area, and she said it's super duper easy. And she was doing them by the
And they do it
hundreds.
like with melons and stuff too. So
yeah. Okay, ASPCA has a list online for poisonous plants for animals as well as the extension. So great, thank you, Peggy. We like these tips.
Yes,
that are
exactly.
in. Very good. And Elsa just says Z. I guess she said.
Maybe she slipped there.
Yeah, it was a typo. Okay, we are caught up, believe it or not. So please, everyone, type your questions into the chat if you have any, or we're getting late enough on, about 7 minutes left. You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question over the speaker. Crickets.
So I don't have anything right now, but we were talking before anybody got on about we have rabbits in the garden. We were it's just an anecdotal thing about lilies. And behind our camera people here, we have lilies. I don't know if Alexander can turn around, but the lilies back there, that's Lilium lancifolium floriplena. It's like we have rabbits. They were eating some of our other lilies, which were a little bit more precious than this one, but this is a spectacular lily, and I could use the rabbits actually to thin this one a bit. It produces bulbils along the stem, and so it self-propagates itself, and it forms dense patches. The one thing I wouldn't mind the rabbits actually to eat in the garden, and they don't touch that one. So right now anyways, so this might be a recommendation of a great lily for your garden. It's a wonderful cut flower.
It is.
Like I said, it reproduces on its own. They come up in other parts, in adjacent beds, because either critters or people pick the bulbils off and throw them into other beds. But it's going to be in full flower. So if you in the next week or so, it's almost full flower now. But for the 4th of July, it should be rather spectacular. So if you have time to come over to the garden and see, a highlight plant would be that. And like I said, it's one that the rabbits could thin. I do not have any issues with because it's so prolific.
I have this one in my yard.
Yes.
I love it. It's beautiful. And the rabbits leave it. It's the only lily they have any.
Yeah, it's the one that you at least have to worry about, the one that it replaces itself on a regular basis. And
but it's a nice summery, hot orange color.
And it flowers traditionally for us here around the 4th of July. So a great one if you want to have cut flowers for the 4th. So.
And the flowers, you can't see them from here, but the flowers are spotted.
Yes, it's one of the tiger lilies.
Form. Is that the double form?
This is the double form, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have a question?
Single form and a double.
Yeah.
Sure, you have a question?
What is the name of that flower? Is that lily?
Lilium lancifolium, I believe, is the species, and then the cultivar is floriplena.
I'm going to type it into the chat.
Yes, Dennis is going to get it there so you can see it instead of just hear me spit it out.
And is it floriplena or pleno?
It's one or the other. It's floriplena or pleno. I don't remember which.
I typed in floripleno.
That should get it for you.
The double flowered form is the floripleno. But the plain Lilium lancifolium, it's also called tiger lily.
Yes,
right?
they're the common tiger lilies.
And so
this is not one of our native lilies. This is one of the Asian ones.
Yeah. Go to the store and ask for a tiger lily.
Yep.
What's the best place to plant cannas in your yard?
Full sun is ideal. They will take wet or dry, relatively dry conditions, but evenly moist would be ideal, but full sun, definitely. They want a rich soil and they'll grow like crazy, gangbusters. But again, like for us here, we get a lot of leaf roller. I try to grow ones that have nice leaves in general, that is colored foliage, but even because they're not always in flower, but even with the Canna leaf roller, they can, can sometimes be a little bit depressing. But this year's been a little better for them. This year we still have some in the garden that have not been overly decimated by them, but they will roll the leaves up and they don't open, and then they turn brown in the inside, and they poop inside the leaves, and they're it's really nasty. Yeah. Little clear caterpillar. But if you don't have those, plant them in full sun. If you're further north, my mom planted some, and I took her some home this over Memorial Day in Western Pennsylvania. They're perfectly fine to grow up there as tender plants, and they don't get Canna leaf roller up there because they don't have the butterfly. So. Okay, you will have Canna leaf roller. You will have those overwintering from year to year.
And of course, Mark said you could cut them to the ground
Yes.
to avoid the Canna leaf roller. You can also just remove the leaves, the
Yes.
individual leaves that are rolled up, and toss them in the trash. And that can preserve most of the plant.
And,
That's what I do in my yard.
and I
don't
also,
have much of a
again, I
problem.
like the colored foliage ones, whether Australia is one of my favorite because it is really glossy. And they do get leaf roller when it's really bad, but they are one of the last ones to be affected. It's a dark, dark red leaf and a red flower. It's really nice. Some of the other ones that have nice foliage. So often whenever they attack, you end up cutting out the flower stalk. So again, I go for the ones that have foliage as well. So if the upper part of the plant, you have to cut it off because of the damage from the leaf roller, you still have something of interest to look at.
Sure, Cannas are like coleus. They're as pretty a lot of
For their
them,
foliage.
for their foliage as they are for their
as long as it's
flowers.
not just the plain old green one. But
We haven't had any problems with
lucky you.
you know, cannas, but you said cannas like sort of a dry soil.
No, they don't want to be dry. I mean, they can actually be grown in water. They can be in dry, they're going to sulk. I mean, if it's too dry. If it was like pure sand or something, there's not enough nutrients, or if it's just not enough water. They want it evenly moist would be ideal, but they can grow in wet soils, no problem. We actually have a native species, Flaccida, if I remember correctly, which is probably down around actually the Wilmington area. It's a yellow flowered species. And that's one of the only areas it's native in North Carolina. But it grows in wetlands.
Yeah.
So
We got cannas when they come up, it's like a dark purple, leaf.
Yep.
Plant. What color is it blue? It's a red bloom.
Okay, is it glossy dark red?
Is it a glossy dark red? Yes.
Okay, it could be Australia, and that's one of the ones I recommend. There are some of the other species cannas that we have that have had lesser issues with the leaf roller too, but they often like to self-sow everywhere. I will say that.
Yeah. Because we have both planted like in a rain pond, but they
You know what?
not grown in a rain pond.
Oh, in a rain pond, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
Sure.
What they're not doing.
They're not going to be spread everywhere in my experience, but like they are tolerant of the wet.
Okay, because we got some others.
They might need to move them up a little. They might prefer a little bit just
The
up
edge of the
the
pond,
edge of the
not in
pond,
it,
not
yeah.
directly. And it's too much if just an inch or two if you're going to put them in the water. I wouldn't put
toes,
them
but
deep.
not wet ankles.
Yes, exactly.
Because we got other cannas that are green, and they are huge.
Yep.
These purple ones are not doing that.
How huge is huge and how small is small?
The green ones are at least 6 feet.
And how tall are the red ones?
How tall? Probably a foot to 2 feet, and they're in the rain pond.
Okay, it might be a little bit too wet for them. Try those out of the pond itself on the edge. Some of the species, like the one I like I've been talking about, Australia. It's a 4 footer, more or less. You wouldn't get real tall plants on that one.
There are new cultivars that are fairly dwarfed too.
Exactly. Depending, you might not have Australia too. There's tons of them now, and there's some that only top out at 2 to 3 feet, and then there's others that get 8 feet and 10 feet.
Yeah.
So,
Because the green ones that we have, they're not in the rain pond.
Yep.
They're sort of close to it.
yep,
And they come up real well.
yeah, they're probably saying you got me in that Goldilocks zone too. So,
And you said they like full sun? Or?
full sun is ideal. Yes.
Yeah, the more sun, the better.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. I'm sorry we still have a few questions in the queue, but it is 4 o'clock. You can always send your email questions to JCRA -events or JCRA programs, or email us directly. Our emails are all on the website, and we will be. Or you can save your questions for the next Hort Hour on the next month.
I'm not sure
has
when
5
that
weeks.
is.
September, maybe? I don't know. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And
Yep, thank
we will
you.
pass your good wishes on to Doug and Chris. We're going to go to the party and get some ice cream and say goodbye to them ourselves. All right, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.